All In Sports Network. We love sports.
How's it going, everyone? Ben Peck here on the All In Aggies YouTube channel, breaking down a 34-24 win for Texas A&M over Mississippi State. 4-0 in the SEC for just the second time in school history. The only other time back in 2016. That year they started off 4-0. They finished 4-4 in the SEC. So we'll see if A&M can buck that trend and make a little program history next week against LSU. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more Texas A&M content in your feed throughout the week. But just want to give my quick thoughts on this game. I do want to start with, baseline takeaway, I was a little disappointed, to be honest, in what we saw from A&M. Not terribly so, but I do think it's important to remember the ultimate objective is to get the win. They did that. This is an SEC team still at the end of the day, Mississippi State. And so they took care of business. In some sense, that's all you can ask for. We are going to, if you want to get picky, and we will, there are some things that were maybe a little bit of a letdown, but we'll get into that. But I do want to kind of, shine a light on some of the positives because it was a victory. As I mentioned, improving to 4-0 in the SEC, 6-1 overall. Heck of a start, heck of a rebound after that game with Notre Dame, where it felt like, in a close game against Bowling Green, it felt like there was enough ammo there to be a little pessimistic if you wanted to, but this team has found a way. Say what you will about Florida, say what you will about Arkansas, although I think Arkansas has proved themselves to be a little bit more competitive lately, but 6 wins in the books, and like I said, 4 in the SEC. Some of the things that I enjoyed about this game, it did feel like, I tweeted at halftime, with the 4-point lead, there's always two ways of looking at it, where you say, hey, I don't think this team's playing their best and they're still up by 4. Or you could say there are aspects of this game where they seem to be in firm control and yet they're only up by 4. What's up with that? Is that going to open the door to weird stuff happening? It kind of did. I think the door was open for Mississippi State. I don't love that, but it did feel like to me that A&M was in control of this game. They start off 9 for 10 on third downs. Let me see. I'm pulling up the final stats here, so if I'm looking back and forth, you'll have to forgive me. They started 9 for 10. They finished 9 for 14, so slowed down obviously a ton toward the end there. Offensively, for Mississippi State, you let them start off with that touchdown drive and then kind of shut them down. That's probably goes too far to say shut them down. You held them at bay, I felt like, for most of this game. And offensively for A&M, I think the opposite. The run game was there once again. Again, I'm kind of just looking through these stats at first blush here. 136 yards, but again, I think for me, that number is not phenomenal. But really, when I talk about the run game, 3.7 yards per carry, it just felt like on the drives when A&M was taking control of this game, they were establishing that line of scrimmage. They were picking up big chunk plays to make third down conversions or to make second downs more manageable. Again, you started off the game 9 for 10 on third down. You slowed down toward the end, 9 for 14. I think I'd be interested to see what your yards per carry was if you kind of take out some of those last few drives when they really didn't have a lot going on at all and then just running out the clock. But it felt like more than anything, even if the numbers weren't crazy, it felt like that run game was always going to be there if you needed to lean on it more. And I was pleased to see that. I was really pleased to see Jabri Barber. We've talked so much about him, even though his numbers haven't necessarily been like the most sexy thing in the world. He has been getting more and more involved, and we saw him today lead the team, 6 receptions, 92 yards. Terry Bussey out. It did feel like he had some of those touches that would otherwise go to Bussey, but Barber seeing some of those looks. But he's a guy, again, that came in with a lot of promise, a lot of encouraging reports of him through spring practice, had the injury and kind of working his way back up to speed. And it looked like that was probably the best we saw him. Well, certainly it was his best game at A&M so far to this point today. So that was encouraging. The passing game, we'll get to Connor Wigman in just a minute, but I thought the passing game, like the concepts and the routes and what was there to be had, that was encouraging to me. As much as I say, it felt like you could always, go deep in your back pocket and pull out, Amari Daniels. By the way, he had a nice game, but Amari Daniels or Le'Veon Moss to get you a nice little boost. It was nice to see that, okay, there's some downfield options there, not just in terms of receivers, but in terms of just route concepts and this and that. And then the disappointment, 10-point win over a team that is still looking just one win on the year. Mississippi State falls to 1-6. Winning margins aren't everything, so I'll just acknowledge that. But I guess a couple things that bothered me with this, the drive right before the end of the half was obviously a bummer. The drive to start the game did not feel great, but sort of tough to evaluate the defensive performance for me as a whole. Again, kind of skimming through some of these stats here as we go through this first time. I haven't really been keeping track of the specific numbers throughout the day, but they got to the quarterback, they created negative plays in the run game, but then they also had these weird moments where they would bust a few big run plays. Mississippi State would. So you had but then you'd have the 4th and 1 at the end of the game. And I think it was Scooby Williams who came up with that tackle where, your defensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. Nick Scorton had a play where he completely blew up, I don't know if it was a read option, but he was in the backfield immediately. And then you'll give up these big runs for Mississippi State. I'm not sure what their long was on the day, but I didn't love that. We've heard Coach Elko talk about how the run defense and the run fits. Yeah, you had a run of 40 for Booth, a 25-yard gain for Daniels on the ground. See, you just had a little bit too much of that for my taste, especially given the opponent. Now, defensively, in the pass game, you hold Van Buren 53% completion percentage. None of their receivers go crazy, although, again, just like the run game, there were certain plays and moments where they would leak out for a big gain, right? You had the touchdown in the second half, 3rd and goal, I think it was, or 3rd and long, and they come in for, about a 15-yard touchdown, give or take. Can we not let that happen? So, they had the pick play that worked really well. It was good execution for them, so give them credit. And I don't necessarily put it on a defender for getting picked. I don't think that's totally inexcusable. It happens, but the fact that no one else was even able to get out there, or the communication, there were just enough of those breakdowns to give me a little bit of not really uneasiness at any point in this game, but just kind of little pockets of frustration. Now, last thing before we wrap up here, I'll go through the pecking order, my top 5 things I was looking for and how A&M fared in that regard. Again, Ben Peck here on the All in Aggies YouTube channel. If you haven't already, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought about this game for Texas A&M for the 34-24 win over Mississippi State. By the way, if you haven't noticed, I'm new backdrop visiting my dad down in Houston. He had his 64th birthday on Monday. So kind of bookending his week with a nice trip home and spending some time with the family. So you'll apologize for the backdrop's nothing crazy, but we got some weird stuff going on. All these stripes going on with the video. Not maybe the most ideal setup recording. I look a little blue, but that's what's going on there. All right. Let's talk about the 5 things I had on my pecking order for what I wanted to see in this game. Number 5, back from the bye. Would the team be sluggish, a little sloppy, flat? I didn't get the sense they were flat. And it wasn't like a totally sloppy game. Again, there were just those moments and those lapses defensively and offensively where a play here or there would happen. Coach Elko was talking about, I think Carter Carls asked him this week about, him being known for his defensive adjustments on third down and really bringing out some exotic looks, and like what led him, how did he get down that path of really trying out stuff on third down to try to make third down conversions as a defensive coordinator. This challenge and this thing that you would, kind of make your mark as a guy whose units succeed in that realm. And he said, third down is so crazy how it can totally erase 2/3 of the game. You can have two good plays, you get 3rd and 1, then third down, you get blown up and it's done. Or you could have two really good plays, you back them up to a 3rd and 16, and then, one good play for the offense totally erases that good start you had to the drive for defense. So it felt like a lot of the third down conversions, and not even third down conversions, but just like a lot of plays Mississippi State was having was erasing good work that was otherwise done for the defense. So again, it wasn't like a total abject, unacceptable performance or stretches at any given point by my standard, but there were enough moments in there that were just things you're going to have to clean up if you're going to want to really do something, not just have a really good year, a year that beats expectations, but really do something special, because it does feel like the SEC is wide open, as Georgia and Texas are, as I'm taping this, just had kicked off in the first quarter. All right. Number 4 was a repeat version of Connor Wigman with what we saw from the win over Missouri. Repeat Connor. This was largely a disappointment, in my opinion. Connor did not have a bad game. 15 for 25, 2 interceptions, 60% completion, and a touchdown, 217 yards. So much of what has made Connor Wigman and this team good and effective is protecting the football and not turning the ball over. That was an issue for Connor today. Not just the 2 interceptions, had another one that could have been honestly a pick 6 if the Mississippi State defender reads it better. He had the 1 interception on an overthrow. He had 2 other wide open targets, one to Noah Thomas, one to Cyrus Allen, who just overshot him and had a big gain and maybe a touchdown, and just was a little overly ramped up today. Was that the bye? Was that the rust? Was that combination of both? Is this still his second game back? I think the most likely answer to that question, in my opinion, is this is still a guy is a junior quarterback, but I believe is either making his 11th start or playing in his 11th game, and those are spread out over 3 seasons. So even though he is a junior, or 3 years on campus, I'm not sure if he's technically a redshirt sophomore, but even though he is in his 3rd year on the team, he still in a lot of ways is a young quarterback, just having to go through stuff. So I think that's maybe part of it. That's probably the biggest thing. Now, again, the good news is those plays were there to be had, and you did have passing options available to all 3 levels, which was our biggest worry coming out of the Notre Dame game is this team just going to be 15 yards down the field and in terms of how far they attack down the field? They did attack down the field. They had ability to attack even further down the field. There are a few nice throws in there that were like high degree of difficulty or higher degree of difficulty. Really, a couple that were more so like they put the receiver in a position to make what would have been a tough catch, but it had to be put there for them to even have the opportunity. The one where Ja'Day Walker got penalized wrongfully, in my opinion. That was a thing where it wasn't like he had to drop it in the bucket, but you did have to put it in a certain spot to make Ja'Day able to make a fantastic play. And he did that a few times. So it's definitely progress. And I think, something that we can hopefully see moving forward, continued improvement, but it was a little bit of a step back from Mizzou, although he did set the bar very high against the Tigers. I wouldn't expect him to be able to do that every single week. But adequate, got the job done. That's probably the biggest theme of today is this was just an adequate performance. You avoided complete disaster. You did keep the door cracked open there in the fourth quarter, especially after the interception and the touchdown shortly after to make it a one-score game. Didn't love that. Want to see a little more of a killer instinct like we saw against Mizzou. But as far as Connor Wigman, I don't know. I'm not much of a grader. Maybe like a C plus, B minus. Left a little bit on the table, but I still think he's plenty good enough moving forward, and I think he'll be able to learn from it. The biggest thing that was, I guess, encouraging is some of the misses he had, the ones I was talking about, the downfield stuff. Those are some of the easier throws, I think, available to him. He's making a lot of the harder throws, and then you miss some of those. So I think it's correctable. That gives me optimism moving forward. Number 3, win the drives early. We already kind of touched on this, but, that whole idea was Jeff Lebby and trying to keep you on the field often, and you need to be able to complement your good offensive drives where you stay on the field, as they did, by the way. They had several of these scoring drives where they were on the field for a number of plays, a good chunk of time, their first possession in the first quarter, and then their first possession of the third quarter. So their first possession of both halves were, I think, about 7 minutes or more. So the goal in my mind is to pair one of those drives with a quick 3 and out or maybe 4 or 5 play drive for the offense for Mississippi State to put that defense back out there, and you can really pile on moving forward. We didn't see that piling on from the offense necessarily, but winning the drives early. I'm going to look at the drive chart here just to see if I can see a kind of a list of these. Here we go. Drive summary. See how long these drives went from Mississippi State. You had, here we go. Bear with me, folks. 14-play drive, 6 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays, 8, 6, 8, 4, 9, 8, 12. So didn't really get off the field as early as I would have liked to see on a consistent basis. You had that stretch where you forced a punt and then had the touchdown. Hold on, I might have gone that backwards. Let me do it again. I did that in reverse order. So they go 12 plays, 8 plays, 9 plays, 4 plays, 8 plays, 6, 8, 3, 4, 6. So yeah, you don't have a play, a drive of 4 plays or less until the late second quarter, and that was the interception. So that was basically a 3 and out. That might have even been on a 4th down, if I'm not mistaken. So that was basically a 1 3 and out in the first half, and then you didn't get another 3 and out until the fourth quarter. Not that it has, a 3 and out is the only acceptable thing, but they punted. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 punts on the day, turnover on downs 3 times, one at the very, very end of the game, but and then the other was in the fourth quarter too. You had the turnover on downs, which was a true turnover on downs in the third quarter. Scooby Williams blowing up that play. I believe it was Scooby. And then you had the interception on the 4th down, which would have been a turnover on downs. So kind of those are the only drives that stalled out between the interception and those plays late. So I think that was a little bit of a disappointment that, again, the defense played okay. They didn't allow the good side is they weren't allowing quick offensive scoring drives. That was positive, but they did let them grind them down a little bit. I guess my biggest concern with that is if Mississippi State can grind you down, then, all right, what are you in store for with LSU or Texas or even Auburn on the road or South Carolina with the way they looked? I know they got a lot of help from their defense, South Carolina, but how is that going to translate in the future? I don't know, but Let me pull up the overall team stats here again. Bear with me, just kind of hopping on right after this game. So if I'm looking away, that's I'm trying to find the information for the good folks back home. 125 yards on the ground, 242 yards passing on the day for Mississippi State. So again, not gaudy numbers, but time of possession was. See, this is the thing. Time of possession was about splits. And that's with a team that, I know Mississippi State can run the ball a little bit in that type of air raid system that they do. Like it's not just pure NASCAR chaos all the time, but they do ramp it up from time to time. They do try to play with a little bit of tempo. I would have liked to see that time of possession gap be a little bit bigger. And part of that, the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, would have been to shut those drives down earlier, which I don't think A&M was able to do for the most part today. Number two thing I had on here was limiting a mobile quarterback. Yeah, Michael Van Buren, not like a guy who's just by design going to take off and go crazy. He is going to try to make plays with his arm. It is a Jeff Levy offense after all, but he can move around enough to make things annoying, I guess I would say, if you're a defender. Came into this game with 22 carries. I'm not sure if that includes today. It does include today. So he came into this game with, let's see, -3 yards. Yeah, -3 rushing yards. So again, it's not like he's going to pick up a ton when you factor in the sacks. It's not like he's going to still finish up with 50, 60 rushing yards. It's not. Their offense isn't built around that, but I was more worried about the Taylor Green model of like a guy buying time, extending plays, and hitting stuff down the field. We did not really see that for the most part. I thought that was a success, the classic Riley Leonard situation, right? Like Riley Leonard isn't going to rush for hundreds of yards or go crazy, but he'll maybe pick up a key third down here or, make a more manageable third down there. The total rushing yards for Van Buren today, he gained 25 yards on his rushes and then finished with a net of -1. Not sure what the final sack number was for A&M. I'd imagine like about 4 or 5-ish. So that's fine. I think that was adequate. Really just didn't want to see a situation where you're ripping your hair out because they are maybe getting a lot of pressure, but you're just never getting them down to the ground. You got him down to the ground. I don't remember him extending a play with his legs that led to like just a massive, massive breakdown in coverage. So the longest reception of the day was 38 yards. Like, bad, but not terrible. Like if that's your worst, I can live with that, especially when you're going up against that Jeff Levy offense. And then the number one thing on my keys, the pecking order, was no crazy stuff. Don't let crazy stuff happen. This was a moderate disappointment, I suppose, because now some of this was on the officiating. I know I saw a lot of Aggies on my feed, of course, saying how they thought A&M was totally getting screwed by the refs. It felt to me like a lot of the flag, I remembered more flags that got thrown and called out that I thought were against A&M that were not really flags. So like of the penalties that were called, I thought there were more misses against A&M's way. That being said, watching this through my lens, were there like potential penalties on A&M that didn't get called and other things that A&M got away with? Potentially. Like I don't remember anything egregious. I don't think the officiating was like a total game changer. I just thought it was it did make it a little sloppy. But it led to what could have been some potentially weird stuff. Like you had like I mentioned, the offensive pass interference against Ja'Day Walker. You had the roughing the passer against Shamar Turner. just before the half. I don't think that led to the touchdown. They were already pretty close, but like, could that have you had like a third down get extended and then or a fourth down get extended and then all of a sudden you that take it off the board and that third down stop goes away and then that leads to a Mississippi State touchdown. It felt like that was on the precipice of maybe happening a couple times. I don't think it ever quite got to that point, but beyond that, in terms of the controllable factors for Texas A&M, I think, by the way, I meant to do this earlier. I'll play a little bit of some highlights here from our good friends down at WCBI in Mississippi. So here we've got some first half highlights. Dak Prescott out of the game in Mississippi State. We'll just kind of play this on the background. Again, though, like here, first drive of the game, you allow quick touchdown Mississippi State. The biggest thing with these underdogs is you can't let them believe any longer than they absolutely need to. Good play here. See, this was nice. Anyway, I'll try not to get too distracted with this highlight package going. But, there were moments. There was a fourth down where, they went for it a couple times. They got a stop. They got the pick. They snuffed out the punt. The fake punt, so that could have been wild stuff. So it wasn't like totally A&M let crazy stuff happen, but really it was the two interceptions that were the biggest thing for me, especially the one that led right to the touchdown, started the fourth quarter, and then that makes it a 7-point game, and all of a sudden you're back in it. The drive right before the end of the half. Like, these are things that are happening that it's kind of the opposite of putting your foot on their throat. These are some first half highlights, by the way. It's the opposite of putting your foot on your throat. It was like moments that Mississippi State had that A&M allowed for almost like you're taking your foot off and like easing up, right? Like, instead of like, I guess slightly different. I know it maybe sounds like the same thing, but slightly different twist on it. Instead of like, hey, we're up 10, go down the field, score, go up by 17. It's like, okay, we're up by 14. Ease up here a little bit, lose our focus, lose our concentration, and then a mistake or this or that. And then all of a sudden we're in a situation where if real crazy stuff happened, if they do have the pick six on Connor, if they get one more stop, or if the fake punt does work, you're in a position where the game is close enough that could have directly changed the outcome of the game. And I'm not talking the scoring margin of the game. I'm talking the win-loss outcome of the game. So I didn't like how, again, even within the things A&M can control, they felt like they left some of that in the balance a little more than I would like to, and to my liking for them. But again, ultimately, eventually, you do come out on top. You do handle your business. 34-24, 6-1, and now you're primed for a top 15, top 10 showdown against LSU. I'm not sure what else is going on around the country, how that will affect some of the rankings. Just checking the scores here. At the half, as I tape this, LSU is up 16-7 over Arkansas. So if they hold on, it potentially top 10 matchup at Kyle Field. That'll be fun. And I do think, especially with Mike Elko, but just human nature in general, these kids tend to elevate their play to the next level as the opponent dictates and rise to the moment. And it can be tough kind of coming in. I don't want to say trap game looking ahead to the LSU game, but, you're coming in off their week off. Mississippi State is playing better, and I think you do have to give them credit for some of this too. It's not just like they're a terrible team and you played with your food and A&M messed around, goofed around, and almost made it dicey. Like, Mississippi State is getting better, and I think you got to give credit to their players and their coaching staff for that. But could have been better today. Ultimately, though, you did what you needed to do. The most important thing, you got the win, set up that big showdown with the Tigers next week at Kyle Field. That's going to do it today here on All In Aggies. Again, I'm your host, Ben Peck. If you like this video, if you're still watching, you already made it almost 30 minutes, go ahead and like the video. Help us with our subscriber count. We just passed 500. We're trying to create some distance from those fellows down in Austin. So help us do that and help us get to 1.2 thousand subscribers, 1,200 subscribers from the 12th man by the end of the football season. That's what I'm setting my goal at. Can we get there faster? Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Do it. Let somebody know about the show. And again, go on like your sibling's computer, who, if they're a Longhorn, I mean, I'm in that situation, and just subscribe for them and fill their feed with Aggie propaganda and Aggie content. Do whatever you got to do responsibly. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you back here on Monday.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.